I loved Spider-Man Brand New Day. It might possibly be my favorite Spider-Man movie to date of all of them. I haven't seen the cartoon Spider-Man, but of all the live action Spider-Man through the Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland movies. I just love this one. And apparently a lot of other people did too, because I saw this morning on a post on X, on Variety's accounts, that it made 72 million in domestic in Thursday previews. I think that includes Wednesday previews too. Thanks very much for watching, by the way. My name is Claiborne Davis. This is my review, as you might have guessed, of Spider-Man Brand New Day. Before I get started, apparently this helps the algorithm if you can like the video and subscribe to my channel, and maybe all my social media if you like. I'm also on Facebook and X, aka Twitter. So thank you very much for doing that if you are so inclined. So I don't really have any complaints about this. By the way, I will give you some. First parts will be non-spoilers, and then I'll get to some spoilery stuff, which you can come back to if you have not seen the movie yet, which I encourage you to do as soon as possible, because these comic book movies get spoiled online almost immediately. I don't have any real complaints about Spider-Man Brand New Day. I'd give it a 9.7 out of 10. It's always nice to have a little bit of leeway there to change my mind and to allow for maybe some things that I might have thought of later that could have been improved upon. And by the way, this review is not going to be comprehensive. These are just some of my initial thoughts. Today is Friday. It's about 6:20 Friday evening, by the way. I saw it yesterday at 3 o'clock, Thursday, 3:30 rather, although probably more like 4 o'clock after the 30 minutes of previews. Let's see, a few other spoilery things. You could definitely see the influence, in no particular order, you can definitely see the influence of Dustin Daniel Cretton as a director here, who you might know, directed Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which I think came out in 2021. So there are some scenes with The Hand, I guess sort of the martial artist group, you could say, that seemed like they could have been plucked right out of Shang-Chi. Beautiful scenes, and also some things that kind of reminded me of the cinematography and the action scenes in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So that was pretty cool. It seems like there are always nods to other movies in these big blockbusters. No multiverse here, if that is a concern of yours. I mean, I don't mind the multiverse. There have been a lot of complaints about it online from what I could tell. But, if you wanted a chance to stay in a grounded story before we get completely multiversy in about 4.5 months with Avengers Doomsday, this is your chance. My theater was jam-packed. Probably, like a handful of seats in the front row, because, who wants to sit like this and watch the movie? Unless that's all that's left. And a few other seats here and there. And everybody was very respectful. Nobody blurted anything out. My only complaint about the theater might be that I think I sat in some butter, or whatever they pass as butter for the popcorn that somebody else might have left beforehand. So my pants were ruined, but other than that, I liked the movie. Let's see, no particular order here. I really liked the banter between Peter Parker and Frank Castle, aka the Punisher. By the way, full disclosure, I have not seen any of the Punisher series or special presentations or appearances in any of the Marvel or Netflix shows in which he has appeared. So all I got really was knowing his character through this movie and what I might have seen sporadically online, and knowing also the actor John Bernthal from The Bear recently. So that's a very different character. He's a versatile actor. So it's nice to see Frank Castle in a more relaxed attitude, since it seems like he's gone through a lot of bad stuff in the Marvel comics. There's also a very nice use of Aunt May and her memory in this movie. Without spoiling things before I get into spoiler territory, her use of her memory, because she died in the last movie, is very helpful for Peter's being able to not move on, but get better at living with his situation as it is. And there's more to it than that with other people in the movie, but I'll just leave it at that until I get into spoilers. And just before I get into spoilers, I will say the soundtrack by Michael Giacchino, reliably fantastic, because I loved what he did with Fantastic Four First Steps, by the way. And just as he did with Fantastic Four First Steps, the Spider-Man Brand New Day song titles have wonderful and clever wordplay. To name several, Ned Man walking, kiss of the Spider-Man, as opposed to Spider-Woman. Damage control to Major Bomb. A little play on the David Bowie ground control to Major Tom. And then a Brave Neural World instead of Brave New World, which is, wordplay on Captain America Brave New World. Those were the only spoilery things I could think of to add to this, because I really want to get into the spoilery stuff. But go see the movie if you haven't already. I loved it. I do want to see it again, just to see if I missed anything and just to experience that in theaters once more, because, at some point it'll go to a streaming platform. All right. If you have not seen the movie yet, here is your warning. This is your 5-second countdown. Might be a little faster or slower before I get to spoilers. So get ready for spoilers in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. All right, so the first thing I really want to talk about is Jean's powers. I think Jean Grey. It was revealed, of course, after much online speculation that Sadie Sink's character that she is playing is, in fact, Jean Grey, previously incarnated by Famke Janssen and Sophie Turner. So visually, I think in this movie, Spider-Man Brand New Day, Jean's powers I found to be kind of a fusion of Wanda Maximoff's and Sue Storm's powers and of Charles Xavier's telepathic seizure earthquake from 2017's Logan. You're always going to take inspiration from other places, but it's nice to try to make something new of it too. And the way her telepathy just kind of jumps from person to person as long as he or she is within 33 feet of Jean herself, she's kind of leaving a trail of whiplash and inevitable chiropractic appointments in her wake. So I hope maybe as her character progresses that she learns how to be a little more kind to the physical forms that she is occupying. Retroactively, I guess we could also see Sadie Sink as having been having been a telekinesis intern on Stranger Things, shadowing Millie Bobby Brown as 11, because that's kind of what she was all about. She did the telekinesis, she just had the bloody nose. Speaking of Jean's powers, which we'll continue to discuss, I'm sure, as more analysis comes out by me and other YouTubers who have more followers than I do. We all have different takes on this. I think the WandaVision comparisons are inevitable here with the display of Jean's powers. So Jean's unleashing of her powers out in that big concentric wave made me think of Wanda expanding her hex in WandaVision. I'm sure it made other people think of that too. Wanda Maximoff, of course, the Scarlet Witch. While Jean's powers, like Wanda's, are released in this unrestrained, raw blast of power, stylistically, they have that iridescent, shimmering, light through a prism effect of Sue Storm's powers, the Invisible Woman. Speaking of those three ladies, arguably the three of the most powerful in Marvel Comics and in Marvel Cinematic Universe right now. I like how Wanda's, Sue's, and Jean's powers and how they're presented and how they project their powers. It's all done in a different way in the MCU. For instance, Wanda goes into that contortionist-worthy backbend, that backbending blast of chaos magic just before she kind of unconsciously releases her power in all directions when she's creating the Hex in Westview. Spoilers if you haven't seen WandaVision, but that show came out 5 years ago, so that's on you, man. Sue, her powers are sort of that maternally driven, core emanating surge of force field fury. And I'm thinking of the scene of when she attacks Galactus, because hell hath no fury like a mother scorned, if I could paraphrase that famous quote of hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. And then, of course, Jean, as portrayed by Sadie Sink in this movie. It's almost like that, as I can recall, she gives a little bit of that looks-maxing type thing like this. It's sort of a looks-maxing concentric shockwave when her powers, sprawl out in all conceivable directions from where she's being held on Roosevelt Island. By the way, Jean's powers in this movie, in Spider-Man No Way Home, are just off the charts. I mean, more so than any of the other previous cinematic depictions of Jean, in my opinion. And this is presumably without the Phoenix Force, so God knows how MCU is going to handle that when she actually gets it in the MCU. All right, so moving on to the power boosts that we got in this movie. Peter's and Jean's power boosts were both triggered by grief, of course. Peter getting his grief, his power boost came from the fact that he's grieving Aunt May from a bereavement point of view, and also, grieving MJ and Ned from their friendships from a magical oblivion point of view, because, he still has them. There's some interaction there in the movie, but they don't know him as they knew him pre-Doctor Strange memory wipes spell. And then Jean's grief emanates from when she sees the VMAX. We heard about VMAX. I can't even remember what V fully stood, maybe ventilation max, which was the label on the air conditioning vent over that interrogation room, or inside that interrogation room on the ceiling. And she realized that that's the last thing her sister, who also had powers of telepathy and telekinesis, saw before she died in those damage control experiments. So that grief made her infinitely more powerful. Speaking of being punched in the gut emotionally, boy, was there any other scene in the movie that was more gut punchy than when you see Peter kissing what we find out was the gene-controlled MJ. My own spidey sense was going up when I saw this. Something's a little off here. Like, how could MJ, peel back the curtain of Doctor Strange's spell and just out of the blue, just remember Peter? And then we see that it was Jean controlling MJ. So that was really sad. Whew. I also love Florence Pugh in this movie. She was a welcome surprise. I had heard and maybe seen occasionally that she might appear in this movie. And indeed she did. We find out that a hot tub is her office, of which she is certainly deserving. She needs a hot tub, someone like her who's been through a lot, dealing with the death of Natasha Romanoff and then just going through the not drudgery, but sort of the soul-killing stuff that she has to do as her job as the Black Widow now, the MCU Black Widow. I think that's been confirmed. She has, I guess, supplanted Natasha Romanoff in that sense. She's certainly deserving of down-regulation and of calming her nerves after being so. In addition to Natasha emotionally distraught in that street corner scene in the Thunderbolts when she's talking with her de facto father, the Red Guardian. I was also glad to see, and then, of course, her interactions with Peter Parker were quite funny, too. And I was glad to see Liza Colon-Zayas' police detective serving as a support figure and advice giver for Peter. And, not taking the place of Aunt May, but being someone who can step into that role a little bit in a professional sense. So that was nice. Incidentally, that was the second person who I've seen from the Bear series on FX and Hulu appear in a Spider-Man movie. And then, those Hulk scenes, those were some of the best Hulk scenes we've seen since the Avengers in 2012. And indulge me a little bit, and we got the thunderclap too. At least in a movie. We got it in the She-Hulk series, but it was cool to see it in a movie again. And boy, was he imposing in this movie. There had also been speculation online that he might be Grey Hulk, and I think he was just green. Maybe it was just the lighting that we saw in some of the speculative, maybe AI-driven photos online, some of which I ran across accidentally, so a little bit of a unintentional spoiler there. But if you'll indulge me in a little portmanteau and multiversal musing here, we had Jean Grey, Grey Hulk. Is there somewhere in the multiverse a Jean Grey Hulk? A telekinetic, telepathic, and gamma-infused Jean Grey out there somewhere who is as powerful as the Hulk, while also having her traditional powers of telepathy and telekinesis. Who knows? I just thought that would be funny. And then, let's see. As far as our close friendship relationships go, I made this analogy. Peter is to Jean as Yelena is to Bob. We saw how Yelena Belova and Bob, a.k.a. Sentry, became very close by the end of the Thunderbolts. And we see, by way of Aunt May's memory and Peter's and Jean's, astral forms within this memory becoming closer, and Peter serving as a real friend, close friends to Jean in that moment when she really needed it. So I'd be curious if in future projects, if we see not only Yelena and Bob being very close, but also Peter and Jean. So while we did see an evolution of Peter's powers. In this movie, we didn't get a man spider, which is something from the comics when he actually becomes very, very much spider-like. Maybe they're saving that for another, for Spider-Man 5. Speaking of which, the fact that MJ says in Spider-Man No Way Home that she doesn't love Peter because she doesn't know him, man, that was another gut punch. And I can't imagine that that audience members would be satisfied if this were a final Spider-Man movie. That we need to see a resolution of that lack of memory that MJ has for Peter. Can she have the veil finally peeled back? Can she regain her memories and remember the man she loved in Peter in previous Spider-Man movies? Speaking of remembering people, did Ned actually remember Peter in that final scene when they're shaking hands? Is a secret handshake that they once shared enough to break a wizard's spell? Does he possibly remember? I think he remembered it, in that final seconds. It seemed like the light appeared in his eyes. He remembered who Peter was. Does he possibly remember because he had magic in his family? He was able to use a sling ring in Spider-Man No Way Home and open a portal. The fact that he has magic in his family, did that see through Doctor Strange's spell? Did the fact that it was a fancy handshake kind of mimic casting a spell or uncasting one, a memory restoring spell? Who knows? I don't know. And then we did get one post-credit scene. Speaking of Ned, we saw Ned's software indicating that there was I thought it was another Spider-Man, so maybe somewhere out there in the multiverse or universe, I don't know. Presumably, Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield, and we'll have to see where that goes in either Doomsday or Secret Wars. I kind of thought maybe the post-credit scene would be Jean meeting Professor Xavier, giving us a little reveal of who the Professor Xavier is going to be in the X-Men saga in the MCU. But no, we didn't get that. And speaking of mutants, I'm getting all choked up talking about this. We still have no explanation, as far as I know, in the MCU as to how the X-Men came to be in the 616 universe. So maybe, whether that was through the Thanos's or Hulk's or Iron Man's snap that sent out a wave of radiation across the 616 Earth. Or maybe there's some other explanation. Hopefully we'll get that, I would think, probably in Secret Wars or the first official MCU movie. And those are my thoughts. Non-spoiler and spoiler of Spider-Man Brand New Day. I loved it. Everybody I was in the theater with seemed to love it too. I can't wait to watch it again. I want to watch it at least one more time in theaters to experience the sounds and the sights of it. I did have earplugs with me because I don't know. I had just seen the Odyssey in IMAX, and that about made me deaf. It was so loud. But thankfully, I didn't need the earplugs here. What did you think of Spider-Man Brand New Day? Let me know in the comments section if you were so inclined. And thank you very much for watching this video. See you again.